Okay, next up is item 4.9 from the Fire Marshal, Fire Study and Fire District Boundary Modifications. And we are happy to have Jacob Thompson to talk about that item. And he is with us virtually.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for taking the time to sit through this and listen this afternoon. So as you all know, in the last year, 2020, the county had completed a fire protection survey. A third party come in and assess the county's fire protection to look at needs and issues in the short term and long term, as well as make recommendations to the provisions of fire services and look at making sure that we're doing the best things we can to protect our citizens and doing that in the most efficient manner possible. Lauren, I don't know if you have the slides up or not. I can't see them from my end, so. Ooh, there we go. So again, completed in September 2020. With COVID and everything, it's kind of put us a little bit behind the 8 ball with implementing and getting on the road with some of these changes, but with a little bit of time it takes to get some of those developed as well. So we're now kind of picking up the pace on that. Lauren, if you would go ahead and switch over to the next slide. So one of the recommendations that came out of the study was on boundary changes. So essentially, this recommendation was basically telling us to look at where our fire stations are located versus where our district lines are at. Again, for the simple fact of making sure that the closest units are responding to emergencies. So the recommendation was for a county-wide assessment. The recommendation that we're bringing you today is just dealing with the southern portion of the county, and we'll talk about why here in just a minute. But just going through some of the reasons and backing for this is one, just being in line with national standards. 2, deployment efficiency. So when I say deployment efficiency, basically what we mean by that is getting the biggest bang for our buck, doing the best by our taxpayers and their dollars, and making sure that we're using our resources in the most efficient manner without over-resourcing. ISO scores. So ISO being the Inspection Insurance Service Office is what that stands for. Basically, our fire departments are graded by ISO, and the better the score they have, the better rates that the citizens receive on insurance for living in that tax district. So with ISO, one of the factors that plays into that is the efficiency. We call it deployment analysis, but it's the efficiency of how well a fire district or fire department cover the areas of its district within a certain amount of time. So by recentering the fire districts around where fire stations are located, it improves that efficiency and increases those ISO scores. And then last but not least, and this is kind of where the rubber meets the road, and that's response times. So 70–80% of our calls now in the fire service are medical related. Medical related calls are a single unit response, so it would just be one. The majority of them are single unit response, so you would just be getting one fire engine. And so we want to make sure that those closest units are getting to those emergencies as fast as they can to answer those calls. A cardiac arrest event, the chance of survival reduces 10% for every minute that care is not rendered. And so again, just stressing the importance of getting people, making sure we're doing what we can to get people on scene as quick as we can. Go ahead, Lauren, if you want to switch over. So again, the area that we're speaking about today is on the southern portion of the county. And again, we'll talk about why here in just a second, why we're starting with this versus the county. One thing I want to point out is with this particular proposal today, Allen Fire District and Georgeville Fire District in this have a very, very small impact. The main impact of this proposal will be between Closed Door, Harrisburg Rural, and Midlane Rural Fire Districts. Lauren, if you will go ahead and switch over. Okay, the map you see in front of you, and I'll also preface this with the maps that you're going to be seeing in the slides today are attached to the agenda item, as well as additional maps. Each individual fire district's attached in that agenda item. Those are online, available for the public to see if they would like to see those. And I've also, for the commissioners that are in the meeting room there, these two maps are on the wall for you to take a closer look at if you'd like to do so. So one thing that I just wanted to call everybody's attention to in showing this map is you can see the station locations on that map. It's a small red dot from what I can see, but as you look closer on those maps that you have in your hand, you'll see that those red dots are the fire station location. Towards the middle of that map, there is a red dot, and that is Flow Source Fire Station. The blue area that we see, and this is the current fire districts as they sit today. Looking at that district, kind of what we're doing here is, in a simple form, is the elongated shape of that district is what we're addressing. And so if you look down closer to the bottom of the map, there's another red dot. That is Midlane Fire Station 2. And so if you would, the construction yellow color is Midland's current fire district. And you'll see that there's areas of flow store that is in immediate proximity to the flow store fire district. And that is what we're trying to address, is that, you know, we've got stations that are in place that can serve citizens in a closer manner in a quicker time frame. And that's what we're essentially addressing in a simple way. More to the So the map that you have now on the screen is the proposed fire districts. So this was after we ran assessments and looked at everything as far as where the fire stations are located in regards to travel distance and time frame. This is where the fire district boundaries fall if you put every single parcel in the closest fire district to the closest station. You'll see that, again, just looking at the shapes of the districts, how it's more centered around where those fire stations are located. And that is essentially what we're trying to achieve, is being efficient as we can with getting people on the scene and with our resources by being able to access everything in equal manner. This map basically is, and again, Flow Store Fire District unfortunately sees the largest impact from this in this particular portion of the recommendation in the proposal. Any area in orange that you see on that map would be areas that would be stand to move out of Flow Storage District, and any areas in a green color are areas that they're actually picking up out of another district. And so there is gains and losses, but again, the goal is to get those fire districts centered around those station locations. And I'll also make mention at this point too, that this is an ongoing assessment. This is not something that we just do one time and that's the end of it. As we move through time, the additional stations are going to be added, whether it be for municipal growth or ISO recommendations because of demand. If we have an area that has a larger amount of residential area and the calls increase and ISO recommends an additional station, then these are things that we'll have to reassess going forward.
Hey, Jacob.
So,
Jacob,
yes,
this Mike, on your map, on the proposed fire districts, just for the board's clarification, inside the purple area, there are some orange areas, and they've got hashes through them. What does that mean?
So inside that blue district, which is Flow Store, those hash districts there that you'll see, it's kind of yellow with some black lines through it. Those are areas that are actually in the town of Midland that Flow Store is contracting with to provide fire service for those particular parcels, just because they're closer than Midland Fire Department is. I'll also make this caveat about these maps as well, is for the clarity of just the visual presentation of the maps. There are municipal areas in both the purple and the yellow areas, which are both Harrisburg rural and Midland rural. And there's areas in there that are actually in the town of Harrisburg and Midland that are separate from these districts. Again, this is just for visual orientation to show you kind of what we're trying to achieve.
What
Mike,
is
does that
the
answer-
yellow, the big yellow spot in the blue, towards the top of the blue?
Yep, so that yellow, so that particular yellow spot is the city of Concord. So the city of Concord, those are annexation areas that the city of Concord has annexed. The light blue teal-looking color towards the top of the screen, that's Allen's Fire District. The brownish color to the right is Georgeville's Fire District. And the white little area that you see between the teal and the purple, that is the area that we contract with the city of Concord to cover in the county. So that's what those particular colors are. On those maps, there is a legend at the bottom that will kind of lay that out for you as well. So if you forget kind of what I had said, those are on there for your reference.
So the orange ones that are crosshatched, they contract with Flow Store to cover those. Does the city of Concord contract with Flow Store to cover that yellow patch up towards the top that I asked about?
No, sir, they do not. Just the area there with Midland is town of Midland is the area that's, as far as I know, that's the only area that they're contracted to cover. Concord still covers their area with their current resources. I will tell you that Concord has an additional station planned to move down this area. I don't know exactly where. I do know it's going to be located out here just for the sole purpose of, again, addressing their ISO numbers and to making sure that they have station close by to protect the areas that they've annexed. So I do know that's planned, I think, for the 25, 26 year time frame. But again, that's one of those things we'll have to address and kind of assess moving forward.
So Jacob, just to correct me and for the board, as you see as Chairman Morris said, in the middle of it looks purple to us, but I think you're calling it blue.
You're printed and one looks
Oh,
different.
okay. Okay, yeah. So where Midland does not have a town fire department, they are contracting with the rural volunteer department. So as they annex, they choose, or they're proposing to bring the Midland Fire Department with them to where they annex, whether it's in another district or not. They want to be served by the Midland Fire District. Just
Yeah,
want to make sure.
and that's a good point to point out. And again, this map doesn't show those annexed areas in particular, but Midland has expressed, as Mike said, the desire to contract with Midland within the areas that they can access that within those ISO boundaries. Again, that annexed area that's in the middle of Flow Storage District with the hash mark, that's a little bit outside of the most efficient way for the Midland Fire Department to access that, and that's why the town contracts with Flow Store for those areas. But any and all areas that they're annexing, they have expressed that their desire is going to be to contract with the Midland Fire Department to provide coverage for those areas, especially down in some of the areas that we're addressing closer to 24, 27. So looking, and I told you we would kind of talk about why we're looking to address this area now and then address the rest of the county moving forward into the next year. So the study itself made a point to point out this area as the greatest need, or the area of greatest need, and really kind of prompted that recommendation. And of course, the recommendation was to go ahead and assess the county as a whole, but this particular area is really what prompted that red flag to say, hey, you guys might want to look at this. It is one of the largest areas impacted by this particular issue. And there's such a disparity between what is proposed and what is currently in place that it really makes it a high priority area. Another thing to point out is just the continued growth in annexation. And as we just talked about, Midland and Harrisburg choosing to contract with those departments, Midland, and of course, the town's going to provide its own fire protection, but Midland, the town of Midland contracting with the Midland Fire Department to provide coverage for those areas. The continued growth and annexation in those areas with the residential continuance in there, it's really creates an inconsistency in response areas. And again, the rapid annexation, those areas are being pulled into those municipalities anyway. And so in making this change, it's just another way to address some of that change up front. I'll also, make mention of an annexation agreement, and I'll show you a map on the next slide, but an annexation agreement between the town of Harrisburg and the town of Midland that includes future land use planning, and it shows that these areas will be continued to be absorbed into those municipalities. And then last, I wanted to touch on the town of Midland's resolution supporting the fire study recommendations. Again, making this priority, the town of Midland has expressed the wish for the commission to take action, particularly on this subject, and you all have a copy of that. And so I'm not going to get in real deep in that, but that was another reason we felt like it was a priority. I will point out that there is some greater than 5 mile areas still in the affected area, and so with this change, we do have several parcels that would see an immediate reduction in their insurance premiums. When I say greater than 5 miles, any department will get that primary ISO rating for areas less than 5 miles. If they're greater than 5 miles from a fire station in the district that they're covered by, they're rated at a 9 unless they get over 6. If they're between 5 and 6 miles, they're rated at a 9, and their insurance premiums increase significantly. And so we have several parcels within this area that would stand to see an immediate decrease in their insurance premiums by this change. So again, I mentioned the annexation agreement. So there's a black dotted line that kind of follows towards the middle of the screen. That is currently the annexation agreement line between Midland and Harrisburg. I will make mention that we did not use this as a reference point when we were making our changes. The changes do happen to fall close to this line, especially down toward the Morton Road area. But this was just, again, one of the reasons why we thought it was a priority. Again, we didn't use this. The changes themselves are based strictly off of what's closest, but it does happen to follow closely with this line in some of those areas. So just kind of wrapping up, I'll conclude by saying again that these recommendations are based strictly on who is closest to each parcel. I mean that is it in a nutshell. All of our departments do a great job. None of these proposals are based off of one department being better than another. It is strictly based off of who can access our citizens the fastest. And just kind of give you a little bit of insight on how we went through this process. We sat down with the chiefs individually, collectively in the same room. I actually took a paper map, rolled it out on the table. I took my scale wheel and set it to the scale on the map, and we went road by road, station by station, area by area, and looked and walked through it collectively and looked and see, okay, who is actually closer to what areas. And we have to take into account there may be some roads that we're considering that they may not necessarily be able to get a fire apparatus down. So those were the things we had to sit down together and talk about. I will make point that when we come to you guys last year in November, I think it was, to give you an update on this recommendation, I had a point in there that said that OSFM would have to review the maps before approval. That has now changed. We received clarification, so OSFM does not have to review the maps before approval. They will just change it afterwards if the board decides to approve the recommendation. So I'll also make another note that if the changes are adopted, the changes will not go into effect until the turn of the fiscal year. the July 1, 2022 is when these changes would take effect. So at this point, what we're requesting of the board is, if it be the pleasure of the board, if they would like to move forward with recommendations at this point, would be a request to set a public hearing as required by law, and for the due diligence for the citizens for the March Board of Commissioners regular meeting, so that will be March 21st. Will be, if the board chooses to set that public hearing, will be actually scheduled a time with C.C. Griffin Middle School to hold a public meeting prior to that on March the 8th. So we've got time reserved, so that way we can get a little bit more information out. We'll be reaching out with online tools and several other resources to make sure that everybody's informed about the changes and we can answer any questions that anybody may have. So with that being said, if anybody has any questions, and I will also say that thank you to Tax Department and GIS. This is very, very labor intensive for GIS. We had a lot of meetings back and forth, and I just want to publicly thank them for their help. It is a very large labor burden on them to make all these changes in maps. So, but with that being said, if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer anything that I can.
I just had a quick question, Jacob. When did you say you were trying to schedule a public hearing at C.C. Griffin?
So it wouldn't that would not be the public hearing. It would just be a general public forum or public meeting.
Okay.
That was March the 8th.
March 8th?
Correct.
Okay.
And we're looking 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. for that meeting. And again, that's if the commissioners decide to move forward with a public hearing. We just want to make sure that if there's any personal questions, if somebody just, wants to have a face-to-face conversation about any of this, that they would like clarification, we're going to be there and be available to answer those questions for those folks face-to-face. It is a very large impact, and so we just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence by the citizens.
I want to make sure that I'm following the orange hashed that County Manager Downs brought up. So the orange hash area that's in the middle of the blue is the flow store. The map I'm looking at, I guess, is the draft proposed. So that orange hash is Midland Fire annexed area that they will continue to serve. They currently serve and will continue to serve.
So I'll make a clarification too. So even though the town of Midland and Midland Fire Department share the same name, the Midland Fire Department is still a independent nonprofit. They are not part of the town. And so those hashed areas out there in the middle of Flow Store's fire district is areas that the town of Midland has annexed that they contract with Flow Store to cover. Midland Fire Department has no dealings with those areas as it currently stands.
Okay.
And so
well, that makes much more sense than what I thought I was understanding. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
Okay, other questions for Jacob? Well, I think this provides a good opportunity, the explanation that we've received tonight, to have that public meeting on March the 8th would give anybody and any of those fire districts an opportunity to attend and ask questions. And then the public hearing that we would have on the 21st would be a second opportunity for them to provide input to us and provide any comments they might have. So it sounds like a good process, Jacob. Thank you for your efforts. So we do have, if we want to set that public hearing for March 21st, we would need to suspend the rules and vote to schedule that public hearing tonight. So if it is the pleasure of the board, I would accept a motion to suspend the rules of procedure.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And Commissioner Kiger, you look like you had a question.
Well, I'm just wondering why we can't set it at our regular meeting for the next regular meeting.
I think because of the time limitation, is that correct? Like, we have to give notice more than,
than the normal time for
Yeah.
our public hearings.
right, so
It
if
has
we
to be
set it for our
first.
regular meeting, that would only be 2 weeks from now.
I was sort of making that assumption, is why I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't put the question, but I must have been deep in thought.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, if it is the pleasure of the board, I would entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing for our March 21st, 2022 regular meeting to provide public input on these changes. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All
Aye.
opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you, Jacob.